Hey guys. Hey.
So it's going to Hollywood.
All right, back at you, man.
Thank you for that. What words come to mind when you think of someone that's been diagnosed with mental illnesses? Is it crazy or dangerous? Today I want to talk about mental illnesses and mental disabilities. This month has been Mental Health Awareness Month here at United States Pretrial Services. Some of you may know someone who's been diagnosed with a mental illness. Some of you may be living with undiagnosed mental illnesses. Today I'll be speaking about mental health in hopes to enlighten you on the topic. Today I want to define mental illness. I want to talk about why I think we automatically assume that people are deranged when it comes to being diagnosed with mental illnesses. I want to talk about different types of mental disorders. And then I want to talk about the good and the bad when it comes to mental disabilities. To get started, I want to define what mental illness is. How do you define mental illness? The National Alliance of Mental Illnesses of the Mentally Ill defines mental illness as a condition that impacts a person's thinking, feelings, or mood, and may affect his or her ability to relate to others. MedicineNet.com says that mental illness is a disease or condition that influences a person's way of thinking, behavior, and the way they relate to others. So we're talking about the brain. This is what mental illness affects, is the brain. Now that we've defined mental illness, let's take a look at why I think people look at people differently that have been diagnosed with mental illnesses. One, I think we fear the unknown. We're uninformed, so we kind of just go with what society says. It's that mental stigma that people with mental illnesses are dangerous or crazy. In a general social survey, the Journal of Mental Health, 17% of respondents thought a person with major interpersonal problems were likely to do something violent towards others. 33% if the person was diagnosed with major depression. And 61% if the person was diagnosed with schizophrenia. So this is how we view people with mental illnesses. But what people don't know is that with proper care and treatment, that 70 to 90% of these people can live a normal, healthy, and productive life through medicine and treatment. And this is according to the National Alliance for the Mentally Ill. Now that we've talked about that, let's talk about different types of mental illnesses, such as bipolar disorder. It causes highs and lows in a person's mood and the way that people think. Depression. Depression is more than just feeling sad or going through a rough patch. It's a serious condition that requires understanding and treatment. Eating disorders is so much more than just being fat or skinny. It's when you become so preoccupied with food and weight that you can't focus on other aspects of life. Schizophrenia. Schizophrenia is when we lose touch with reality, and it makes us have disordered thinking and behavior. Anxiety disorders. This is when anxiety becomes overwhelming and repeatedly impacts a person's life. Now that you know a little bit more about some of these mental illnesses, and there's tons of them, let's talk about some of the good and bad when it comes to mental illnesses. One of the bad things, and I'm going to talk about the bad first because I certainly believe that the good outweighs the bad. The first bad thing is stigma. As we talked about earlier, it's that stigma that society says that because you've got a mental illness, you're crazy or dangerous. The second bad thing is that if left untreated, the conditions can get worse and a person can become a danger to themselves or society. Another bad thing is that some people feel like when they've been diagnosed with mental disorders, they feel like they can't get a job or that they can't live a normal life. They have a sense of worthlessness. And the most shocking bad thing is the United States Department of Health and Human Services, Mental Health, a report of the Surgeon General reports that 1 in 4, approximately 57.7 million Americans, experience mental health disorders in a given year. That number is staggering. So you might ask yourself, what are some of the good things about mental illnesses? As we talked about earlier, 70 to 90% of people diagnosed with mental illnesses can live a healthy and normal life, as long as it's treated properly. Beethoven, Van Gogh, Isaac Newton, all these are names that we know. All of these people suffered from bipolar disorder. And this was covered in The Key to Genius, Manic Depression and the Creative Life. Michelangelo is discussed in the Journal of Medical Biography, suffered from Asperger's disease or high-functioning autism. You might ask, what's so good about all of that? Well, these geniuses lived with mental illnesses, and they did great things. These are some of the most influential artists of all times. My point is that even if you live with mental illnesses, you can do great things and do wonderful things. So I'd like to bring this speech to a close. Today I've talked about mental illnesses, and I hope you've learned that mental illnesses affect us all, how they affect us all. I've defined mental illnesses, and we've talked about how we view mental illnesses. We've talked about different mental illnesses. And lastly, we've talked about the good and the bad about mental illness. In conclusion, I hope that you've learned enough today to view mental illness a little differently. I know that I certainly have. I hope that if you're living with mental illnesses, or that if you know someone who is, that you realize how healthy and productive life can be, despite that illness. I want to leave you with this. Don't be among those that stigmatize the mentally ill as being dangerous or crazy. After all, mental illnesses are a real and legitimate health concern. Thank you.
Yeah, all right. You got 16 seconds left.
Cool.
Good tally.
Oh yeah, there's the first card. Sorry.
16 points off. Yeah, it's been so long since I've been in school. There's no way I could survive that. I can relate.
You just did a 2-hour, 30-minute presentation yesterday.
She says, yeah, a lot of this starts to go. Yeah.
You can do it.
I'm talking about me, I can do it.
Someone said it to her
That doesn't
a long time ago. She's like, so one of the e-voucher people.
All right. Very good.